It's anonymity. All right, here we go.
You have found us. More podcast, where we want you to know God more deeply, find lasting freedom, discover your destiny and make an eternal difference. Now.
You're not dressed like ready for a tennis match today.
I am actually.
Are you?
You've never seen tennis pants before?
I have not. Do I look like I don't look like a very sporting person, so.
You look like a janitor.
I am.
All right.
I just part-time.
All right. Well,
part-time. That's how I make my extra money is janitoring. What is that word? Janitoring.
And then Peach over here looks like somebody's thug granddaddy.
Yeah, I was out and about picking up stumps this morning.
Were you?
Yeah, I had a wonderful friend give me some wood that needed to be carried home, and it was really big and really barky.
What was that wood that we were so excited about yesterday?
Yesterday, we found out the mystery. So someone gave me some black walnut.
Oh.
And but we discovered it. They put it in a place I told them not. I didn't tell them to put it there. I told them to put it someplace else.
Right.
And so when it showed up in the other location, we thought it was this mystery wood, but we've come to the bottom of it. It was given by that same person, so it's all good. And I rushed over there and got it. But Mr. Budnick hid it so nobody else would take it, so I thought it was stolen already. And so I called him up last night. So this morning, anyways, I was picking up logs and putting them in the back of the truck, and so
I think it's
that's
funny.
why I kind of look like this.
You know, we were sitting around the table talking about it, and everybody's like, "It's just wood." You know, it's not a big deal during staff meeting.
Yeah.
Oh no, he's like somebody said some cherry wood or something, and
there was some cherry donated, but it was the black.
It's not cherry wood. It is
black walnut.
Black walnut. And it was just funny because he is that into this.
Yeah, and
You're
in black walnut, I have a nice supply of black walnut, which is great. But when it comes already kiln dried and 2 inches thick, now I can do some stuff.
Now you're talking,
right?
Yeah.
So I made these butter dishes that were out of the park. Did I tell you guys about that already? Yeah. So there's a wonderful person at Harbor Light that wanted a double stick butter dish with lid.
Oh.
So I made one. My wife saw it, confiscated it. My daughter saw it. She got one. My daughter-in-law got one. And then finally my customer got one. So it was by that time amazing.
It's perfect.
I don't Art Nouveau style.
Yeah.
How much money do I have to throw at you for you to get me
$100? Yeah. It's probably $100.
$100 all day.
All right. Well, my dad's got a bunch of wood. Bunches of it.
If you give me wood, then your butter dish will be
cheaper.
Next to nil. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, we've got good wood.
Mm-hmm. You provide the wood, you get a better deal.
Mm-hmm.
But I have bought, I have not. My wife has bought a lot of his stuff over the years, and we have it in the house, and I'm not allowed to touch it. It's for decoration.
Yep. You go to my mom's house, and she's got like 3 super primo spoons.
Yeah.
They've never touched food. They're on the wall.
Yeah, you don't touch them.
We talked about that.
Mm-hmm.
What?
How it was kind of funny because I wasn't using any of the stuff that I got from PG.
Yeah.
And then God used it as an example with me. He was like, hey, sometimes the best gifts are the ones you feel like you can't use, but you need to.
Right.
And so he kind of was like, you should go use your spoon. So then the next day I was like, all right, me and this spaghetti.
You did it.
I did it, and it cleaned up just perfectly.
Nice.
I was sweating.
I still don't get a chance to use it. It's
you should have seen me at that one sale. I sold so many of these smaller size spoons because they make your ice cream taste amazing.
They do.
Do they really?
It really does.
What do you think it is?
It's not having that metal spoon on your teeth or putting wood in there just makes the ice cream just pop.
Yeah. And my at the fair, what was it, 2 weeks ago, the little market in Odin, I got a campfire set and then a coffee spoon. And one of my friends is getting married, and so I sent them the set. And then my best friend, I sent her the charcuterie board with the because that was what we would do all the time is charcuterie this, charcuterie that.
Yeah.
And they live at the beach, and so they'll do like charcuterie on the beach. Nice. And so I think they're going to be very pumped.
Yeah, I'd like to hear back about
That's
that.
cool.
That would be
That's
great.
cool. Yeah.
I was picturing them being able to eat their little dinner on the beach on their little charcuterie boards, and I was like, you know what?
I sold 6 sets of those.
Yeah. And it was interesting because I bought them for myself, and then I got in the car and I was like, you know what? This would be a really cool gift for them. I see Peach all the time. I'll just go to the next fair and get it for myself. You know, it's fine. But
And you did.
I did. I let it go.
You know what? I was just thinking as you're talking about that. I think what we should do for the cake sale that's coming up, you should make a
cake stand.
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh,
With
that
a
would be
cake.
awesome.
Okay.
That's nothing. Nobody else has that.
Okay.
Because that's brand new.
So that's the flat top with the
With
little,
the little
stand.
pedestal.
Yeah.
I could
cake
do
stand,
that.
yeah.
I could do that, no problem.
That would be amazing.
Yeah.
I think I would buy the cake just for the cake stand. You
I know,
should
that's what
start the
people
cake
do.
off at like $100.
Oh, way more.
They all start off at 100.
Yeah, we all started at 100. Yeah. Everything starts at 100. Well, no, there are some things
I think
that
we
I've done
started
75.
at 50 maybe. But
Yeah, but then Chelsea's looking, because I did a couple
Yeah.
years of the auctioning, and she's looking at me like 50, higher.
yeah, it
Oh, I remember this now because I was the one running around in both services.
You were, yeah.
Right.
Okay.
And I was the one wearing the big red hat.
Okay.
yeah, we just had to start the ante a lot higher.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then you get those ones that, you have the bidders going nuts where it's like 1,300, 1,400, 1,500.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
you know what we did a couple years ago is we had a table out there, the $20 table.
Yeah.
So people could participate.
Mm-hmm. Just
at
throw
that
money in.
Yeah,
Yeah.
at the
Yeah.
lower end kind of stuff. And then
That's just entry level.
yeah,
You get Twinkies on the entry level, and it's not really baked stuff.
I'm going to make something super crunchy.
1 year I did a deconstructed cake and actually made $75 for it.
it comes in a box. The egg is still in the.
So this one year I went to a cowboy church in Texas and they were doing a chili cook-off and a dessert
Yeah.
competition. My chili did not do well because my father came in and added brown sugar to my chili.
Oh, come
I wanted
on.
to kill
That's
him.
pretty common.
No, but it wasn't the flavor profile
For what
And
they're
then-
looking for, yeah.
Yep. And then I had made a big peach cobbler, put it in this dish on top of my Toyota RAV4. And my boyfriend at the time opened the door. The whole thing fell.
No.
And so it went from being a cobbler to being a deconstructed cobbler. Second
Yeah.
place.
Really?
Yep. The
See,
lid
that's what I'm
stayed
saying.
on, but it just what is it? Conglomerated.
that's
just
good. Sounds good.
So I mixed it all up and I put it in a crock pot and I plugged the crock pot in. And they were like, wow, this is like cobbler pudding
Yeah.
almost.
People love when you put the word deconstructed anything. They're like, oh, this has got to be really good.
That's
Yeah.
like I had, when I was in the Bahamas, I had pineapple 3 ways.
What?
It was pineapple foam with grilled pineapple on a pineapple cake with pineapple ice cream. So technically it was pineapple 4 ways.
Yeah.
I'm
just went
like,
3.
this is literally just a bunch of pineapple flavored things, but I'm sold. And then I had like orange, was it duck à l'orange? With like orange duck.
Man, what are you at, a 4-star?
No, we were at a all inclusive that had several like
man.
star.
There's a taco stand.
Yeah, right. Framed by Jose.
Yeah.
Jose and his waiver making stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, going to the Bahamas at 18 years old was an experience because I get on the plane and they're talking about something, and the mom that I'm with and the whole family, I went with my friend that I was going to live with in college, and they were like, the legal age to drink is 18 in the Bahamas, and I was
Yeah.
like, so I called my mom when I got off the plane. I said, Mom, am I allowed to have a daiquiri? She said, remember whose you are.
Right.
And I was like, are you giving me permission to have my very first
No.
strawberry daiquiri? She was like, remember whose you are. Pray about it.
That's
I
right.
felt like
Stay away
the
from that Satan
coolest
juice.
cat in the world with my
Stay away from that Satan juice.
mainly sugar little in a little clear cup. I'm like, I am the hottest thing since sliced
Oh, no.
bread.
Oh, no.
I remember
And
it
then you
making,
never went back.
I didn't shut up for the next 3 hours. That was the problem. My roommates were like, hey, not again.
Not yet, yeah.
Cutting you off.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're done.
She won't shut up.
Okay, coffee. Can we get coffee over here, please?
Yeah, whatever the opposite of this is. I think it was just the sugar that was doing it.
Yeah,
I don't
probably.
typically suck down 80 grams of sugar.
Well, giving up sugar does change a lot. I don't know.
Did you give up sugar?
I have. Yeah, I've given up. Wow. I have been very good. I have not touched like sugar in quite a while. Sugar-free stuff I do, yeah. But not like the white cocaine sugar. Yeah, I don't do that much anymore.
Okay.
I've given it up.
Yeah.
And it has helped. I go in for my, my test for all that sugar stuff, and I'm good. So I'm going to keep doing it.
Interesting.
Yeah. Well, do you wonder why you listen to the More podcast? You get interesting conversations like this right here of things that are going on. But also, More stands for maximizing opportunities for right now and for eternity. So stop asking why you listen. Just never forget to listen and pass it on. And our podcast is still, because we have a contract.
Today's the last day.
Today's the last day. Still sponsored by Bulldog Garage Doors. And we have this amazing commercial from our good friend Rebecca Moore over here with her radio voice.
This episode of the More Podcast is sponsored by Bulldog Garage Doors, the toughest name in doors. Whether you need a little bit of spice on your home or your lunch, we have you covered with fully custom garage doors for any building and our new Bully Hot Sauce. Bully Hot Sauce is now available in the Petoskey showroom and at Corktown Pizza. It's no conspiracy. Hot sauce does, in fact, go on pizza. Corktown will be launching the Bulldog Pizza this summer to not only warm your heart, but your belly too. Please sauce responsibly.
And mess with your digestive tract. Would be great. This is it right here. We're going to be doing the Wheel of Destiny from Wilson Insurance. You can give this away today.
Wow, that's great.
And Corktown Pizza certificate, $5 off, and a free appetizer, right? This is what we got going on today.
Yeah, thank you, Rebecca, for helping us get all those prizes. That's great.
It is good. So, we don't do the we got while yet. Are you gonna try it? You want to see what we got? A long
This
ways
is the end of the month.
Yeah, but we're not even close to Bible trivia.
We haven't even done intros yet.
Yeah, you're rushing.
Don't get too excited, girl.
Man, she's like all into it. She's like ready to do it. Yeah,
I've been dreaming about this for weeks now.
have you?
No.
Well, you should, because it's exciting. When that wheel is power. I'm just saying. Well, she's got opinions. I can't even say this now after our conversation. Bigger salads, but sourdough. She's got
say what you
big
want,
opinions. Bigger salads and enough kale and quinoa to survive a zombie apocalypse. It's Becca Moore. Yes.
He's so tough, Wi-Fi connects to him, mosquitoes refuse to bite out of respect, and even his GPS politely asks directions. It's the legendary man himself, Pastor Gary.
There he is. Yes.
All right. And the man sitting across from me that has all of the talent, knows what every button and knob does, is the voiceover king. And re-proposes to his wife every time she travels for an extended period of time. Pastor Alex Norton.
There you go. Thank you.
How many times have you been married?
Oh, man. Many times. This is when it started, this job here.
Yeah.
So she started working at her
She walked into the dream job.
She walked into the dream job.
She's traveling probably 6 times a year.
Yeah.
So you're getting remarried to this new woman 6
Every
times
time
a year.
she comes, yeah.
You lucky man.
I know. It is good. You know, you've been 39 years, I think you mentioned on Sunday.
Yeah.
I'm 30. So, yeah, you know what I'm talking about. It's great having a long relationship. You know, he's not here, but I wrote a great intro for him.
Okay.
And I want to read it because apparently our lawyers are not doing a good enough job. He's still in custody with NICE.
In Canada.
In Canada, yeah. It's ICE, but NICE, the NICE version.
Yeah.
So we call it NICE, yeah.
He's being fed very well.
He's being fed very well. So his introduction was fresh from the Canadian incarceration. He survived brutal maple syrup interrogations, hockey-themed lockdowns, and learned 37 ways to politely apologize behind bars. Pastor Ted. And he's not here. There he is. Yeah. We miss him.
He's on assignment today.
If he just do what they ask him to do, they might let him out. I'm not sure. We're going to take an ID break, come back with our Bible trivia. This is the big day.
It's coming. Get ready.
And I think
you got your little spinner wheel ready
Rebecca,
to go.
you're working on your finger motion there. Rebecca is going to spin the wheel in place of Ted, which is normally his job.
Right.
But she's got to stand in because he's not here. He's still in Canadian jail. So we're taking an ID break and be right back.
Volveré enseguida. Más Podcast es el lugar para escuchar sobre todas las cosas buenas de la Biblia sin todas las calorías.
It's so funny. On Sunday, some friends of mine come back from Colombia. They're friends of Rockies that I've gotten to know over the last couple of years. They can't really speak English, period. I mean, it's really, really hard for them. And so we're standing there during the welcome time. and we're trying to talk. You know, a lot of it's kind of like hand motions, you know. And then she pulls out her phone and she's like, I can translate here.
Nice.
So she's trying to translate, but at the same time, people around her are talking.
Oh, so
in
it's
English.
all getting
So
in
it's
there?
all getting in there. And so the conversation was really awkward and weird because she's like, what? You know, like, what are you, what? And I'm like, no, I didn't say that. Somebody else did. So I'm like, put it up my, it's hilarious. Those translators are great.
Yes, they are.
I was sitting behind her the last time she was here.
Yeah.
And during Page's sermon, she was just sitting there with her phone like this, and it was translating his sermon while she was sitting there.
Yeah, it's pretty cool.
That's
pretty
awesome.
nice.
Yeah, my wife has stepped up her game. She has headphones that she wears now that translate for her.
Okay.
And so she's over in Poland and she's got them in her ear and she can hear what everybody's saying.
That's great.
I said, she swears that the place that she gets her nails done, they're talking about her. I said, just wear those.
Right.
And just sit there and just listen to what they're saying.
Yeah.
Then you'll know what they're saying about you. She's like, I swear they're saying stuff about me. I know it.
Well,
Yeah.
You don't want to know.
I don't think I want to know either.
There's a couple of nail salons in Colorado that part of their pitch was still Asian owned, but they said we will speak English the entire time.
Thank God.
Which honestly, that was kind of a sweet gig,
Yeah.
Because I would go and the girl that I would get my nails done, her name was Dee Dee, and she would speak English to me the whole time. And I was like, thank you, because it's nice to be able to have a conversation with you.
Right.
And not have you talking quietly to your friends the entire time, because then I'm just awkwardly sitting there dissociating, trying to like not be bored to death.
Did you ever
for
get
45
one of those
minutes.
pedicures?
I have not. I've never had anybody touch my feet.
gosh.
Remember his toe
yeah,
thing?
Yeah.
I'm so sorry. You're missing out on a part of life.
Pedicures are amazing.
There is a special section in heaven where you get your feet rubbed.
Yeah.
And
They do that
I'm gonna
too?
be in there. Yeah.
I don't let them.
My favorite thing, even more than the foot rub, is they'll do like the phalange massage where they like stretch your fingers.
What?
And they like do the pressure points on. I think I carry stress in my hands maybe, but they'll do like the palm, and by the time I'm done, it's like, it's amazing.
Let me tell you, Alex, if you ever go, if you get a manicure, they start about the elbow and work down.
Really?
Great. Then they move down, and it's from the knee down. And I'm telling you what, it is heaven on earth. It is so
I
good.
couldn't do it.
I got clear nail polish on mine.
Yeah.
So
And you were good.
Do you want to hear something crazy?
How long does that last?
About 15 minutes.
Yeah.
think.
Yeah.
Okay, so one of my friends was a massage therapist in Colorado. Excellent. She worked with a lot of golfers because she was really good at relieving pain after injury and helping with tightness. And I would walk in front of her and she would be like, I need to massage you. Your right hip is not moving how it should. And I'm like, oh, is that why my swing sucks? And she was like, probably not, but we'll give you a massage anyway. Yeah. But one of the times she was like, your jaw, I can tell that you have a lot of jaw pain. Do you want me to put on?
I need to put the music on for this?
No.
The
flutes.
The flute music.
My mother lost it. She was sitting there on the couch crying, laughing. Long story short, my friend was like, do you want me to put on gloves and massage your cheeks and jaw? But it was from the inside.
What? They put their fingers in your mouth?
Yeah. And I was like, I'm not comfortable with that.
I am not comfortable with that.
She was like, listen, this is something we actually do. And I was like, all right. And it was crazy how much tension I hold in my jaw. No, I'm so serious.
Well, yeah, imagine you do.
Listen, I've had a Thai massage. She folded me like a wonton. I will never get another massage from a Thai lady ever again. She started punching the bottom of my feet and then like got on top of me and put my knees to my face, and I was like crying. I went home.
You just brought up a great memory.
Oh, here we go.
I went to South Korea. We were playing soccer, U.S. versus Korea.
Yeah.
And a guy on the Korean team twisted his ankle really bad, and he was an older gentleman, probably about my age now. And they took him to this hut that was at the end of the soccer field.
Yeah.
And there was a man just sitting in the hut. There's no furniture. He's just sitting in there. They opened the door. We got this guy in there. His ankle is like totally messed up, but we get to watch what's going on. He grabs him.
Yeah.
And he punches him in the heel.
Yes.
And just like starts, yeah, he's doing and he's rubbing him and stuff. But every once in a while, like just hits him in the heel as hard as he can. The guy gets up and walks out.
Yeah.
I am telling you, it was
no way.
Right next to miraculous.
She's on speakerphone while she's massaging me, speaking a different language, picks up my foot and just punches it.
It's serious.
That
man.
sounds like abuse. That's like borderline abuse.
But I'll tell you what, that man walked out of that thing. I just couldn't believe it because I've seen a lot of ankle injuries in my life.
Yeah.
Maybe we're just too soft. here in the States. Yeah.
They sleep on hard beds with heat because they want your.
Yeah.
Like they say it's healthier for you. I'm not saying that they're wrong because the problem is they're probably right, but I, as an American, am too soft for that.
Yeah.
I don't want to smell what my feet look like. Do not. My feet don't belong up here.
Hey, well, I went to Indonesia and Amy got me a massage there, and I'm really particular about that. I'm like, don't leave the room, stay right here, because it's all women that do it, and I'm like, I'm not really into this. All of a sudden, this woman climbs up on this thing and stands on my back, and she's using her heels and her feet to do my back, and I'm like, this is crazy. Then this is the part that got me. They wanted to take my socks off, and I'm like, do not touch my socks. And they were arguing with me, like, no, we can't do it good if you don't take your socks off. I'm like, leave my socks on. That was the whole thing. And my wife's like, listen, he doesn't want his socks off. You just do what you can.
See, that's the thing, is that I'm like, if I was a man getting massaged by a woman, I would be uncomfortable, because if a man tried to massage me, I would be uncomfortable.
If it's my wife's in the room, I don't.
But what's more uncomfortable is having a man massage you.
Really?
Yeah. For a man and a man, yeah. That's weird.
Really?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. But I don't
freak out people at Harbor Light because they give little shoulder massages before service and stuff like that. And some guys are like, "Oh, he's touching me."
Why is he doing that? I've gotten used to it.
Yeah.
Over the years with Pastor Gary, when he comes up and does it to me, I'm like, we got it.
It's just a love. It's a pastoral love.
It's a thing. Yeah. It's not a big deal.
Okay.
But anyways, we should probably keep moving. Okay.
Pastor Gary's like, no, let's stop talking about this.
Yeah.
If he comes up to you, just go, okay, great, thanks.
Just relax.
Yeah. Just relax and just let it happen. Okay, so Rebecca Moore. Let me start the music.
So this is for the winning of the sauce and the discounts on the
pizza and the free appetizer, and you got to give it a good spin.
Can you hold the bottom so I know I'm not going to knock it over?
We don't want Mary winning again.
Okay, ready?
Yeah.
Tell me when.
Go. That's a good spin. I feel the wind off of that one. So help me if it goes on Mary again.
You're clear.
Dave. All right. So Dave wins the hot sauce and the Corktown pizza and the free appetizer.
Congratulations, Dave.
Congratulations,
You're
Dave.
the winner.
All right. So good job. You did a good job.
Who's Dave?
Dave's a good friend of the show.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
We just put random names
We put random names up there, yeah.
So,
Dave wins.
All right.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, PG.
Yes.
Do we have a question for this week?
We have questions for this week, and it is the question is from the covenant that God makes with Noah. Okay?
Yeah.
And the question is going to be what was the main reason that God has to snuff out all breathing life?
All of it.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's there in Genesis.
It is.
Yeah.
Too bad Pastor Ted's not here. He'd be itching
He
to
would
say
be
the answer.
jumping up and down right now.
You'd be like, I know. I'm going to say it. Mm-hmm. Don't. We gotta use duct tape on him because he wants to say it all the time. Well, he's incarcerated, so he can't really say anything. And he doesn't get about one phone call a day, so we're good. Yeah.
10 minutes. 1 phone call.
If you're lucky, yeah. Okay, so that's it.
Yep.
What was the reason why God wanted to snuff out the breathing life? And it's in, well, we know it's
Genesis.
Genesis. So look it there and you'll find it. But if you want to be a part of this, all you have to do is send it to harborlightbibletrivia@gmail.com. harborlightbibletrivia@gmail.com, all lowercase, and you can let us know what you think, and we'll put your
And
name
Dave, we
in the
need to
drawing.
hear how you like the bully sauce.
Yeah, Dave, Let us know. All right, so we're going to take an ID break, come back with the Bible Talk.
Awesome.
우리는 소음을 가져오고 있습니다. 진정해, 내가 바로 돌아올게. 더 많은 팟캐스트를 듣고 계십니다. 3명의 목사와 독단적인 한 여성이 당신에게 예수에 대해 말하고 있습니다.
Is there going to be a translation on that one?
Yeah, I actually feel like I was wrong.
No.
Is that Japanese instead of... That's Japanese.
No, it's Korean.
Is it Korean?
Yeah, it's Korean, yeah. I didn't know that much. Yeah.
So,
it says something about, more podcasts and all that stuff. But,
Ow.
Well, welcome back. Today we're diving into a powerful message about covenant relationships from Pastor Gary that he talked about last week. Ever felt like your beliefs were scattered like a spiritual junk drawer? Or struggled to trust because you've been burned before? You're not alone. We're exploring how God's covenant promises transform our relationships, our trust, and even our response when things fall apart. So grab your coffee and settle in because we're going to talk about this together.
Yes. Well, I thought that was a fun way to get the service started, to be able to talk about the disorganization that people have in their lives. We all have it at some level or another, right?
Right, yeah.
And it was kind of fun to start with the junk drawer, and then the junk floor, and then the junk yard in the backyard.
Yeah.
And but this idea that we have our beliefs, our doctrines, the things, our convictions, they need to be all connected together so that you get a correct and accurate view of what God is doing in this meta narrative, the big story.
Yeah, I like that.
And sometimes if we disconnect them or we don't hitch them together, sometimes we can get the wrong view of what God was up to. Multiple times in the Bible, Jesus or God is doing and asking hard things of people, or he's demonstrating his love in a way that can be difficult for people to understand. But because we know the narrative, the big picture, it makes it a lot easier for us to do that. So it was a way to introduce this idea, this systematic theology kind of.
As soon as you said that, I was excited. I was like,
yeah,
what?
you were like, I could see you just kind of leaning forward.
What?
It was
systematic theology.
Yeah. So, these covenants, because we have a covenant God, these covenants actually help us weave together this big picture, this big story. And each of the covenants, I haven't explained this yet, but each of the covenants that God makes with these individual people apply to us. And so it helps us. So God's story is our story. And we get to connect with God through these covenants that he makes with these, patriarchs throughout the Bible. So good stuff.
It was good. You did mention, though, not only the drawer, but you said, do you have a messy room in your house?
Yes.
That is a junk room.
Junk room, catch-all room.
And that's when I raised my hand. I said, yeah, we do. We call it the family closet. But it's,
family closet?
Yeah.
Okay.
But it becomes the hold for pretty much anything that we want to deal with for the day.
Right. You put it in there.
Yeah.
Promising yourself you'll get to it sometime.
To it. Yeah. At some point we'll get to it.
At some point.
Yeah.
Right. Or your children will be taking care of it when you die.
That's right. They go in there like, what was going on?
Yeah.
In here?
So we have one of those rooms in our basement. It's the extra bedroom.
Yeah.
And it is the catch-all area. We have shelving all the way around it. And it has all of our sporting stuff in there. It has lots of Lisa's extra cooking utensil stuff in there. And then there's the gift shelving.
Yeah,
we have a whole shelf of gifts that we give away to people. And then the floor is just about 2.5 to 4 feet deep of different things that need to go in there. So, we have one of those rooms at our house.
I think everybody, if they'd be honest, would have,
I don't know. I've been to some people's houses, and I'm like, oh, my goodness, has dirt ever been in here? Is there? Yeah, everything is super organized and clean and neat. And safe.
That's like Deb Freilich. We went over to their house one time visiting, and she's like, they were talking about wanting to show us this other room, and everybody's like, don't show them. That's the junk room. We go in there, and everything's like organized, labeled, set up in certain seasonal sections.
Yeah.
I'm like, what? They have the Thanksgiving section, the Christmas section, this, and I'm like, come on.
We have our basement. It's now finished, so I have an apartment down there. But before, it was always known as the pit is despair. Let's go to the pit is despair. And when we had our house moved, so our house was in Harbor Springs, and we moved it to where it is now.
Yeah.
And when we moved it, the guy, one of the movers, is like, hey, I'm sorry, I'm going to have to get rid of the poop shelf that you have down there, but he had a different name for it. What? And we're like, we had never heard that expression before. That you have a poop shelf.
Yeah.
And
I think everybody does. Yeah.
Since we moved the house, we now have a shelf, and we just call it the poop shelf.
Yeah.
And it just catches all the stuff that everything that you don't want to.
And you never know. And the excuse, I love the excuse, is that someday.
Yes,
we'll
get that. Yeah, we'll get there.
We'll need it someday for that. Yeah.
So anyway, so it was a great way to get things started, and we're taking a look at that covenant that God makes with Adam, and I'm going to kind of talk through some things because I feel like I need to clean up some of the stuff that I kind of randomly was letting out there. There's two actual parts to this covenant that God makes with Adam. There's the covenant he makes with creation, and because Adam is a part of the creation and the pinnacle of creation, he really gets a lot of that pointed towards him.
Yeah.
But you can see these characteristics and these parts of who God is by his design, by his creation, and by the promises that he makes.
Yeah.
What's really cool is most of the benefits of this covenant that God makes with creation are almost unspoken. But with a little deductive reasoning, you can see that all systems work together for the good and everything's connected. It's Adam's responsibility to work and to name the animals. I love this part we didn't talk about, that the process of Adam naming the animals was to have him notice that he didn't have a mate.
Yeah.
All the cattle had mates. All the birds had mates. All the fish had mates. Adam has no mate.
Yeah.
So God did that in a way to show Adam that he needed someone, and then therefore he goes ahead and creates Eve. So we see an attribute of God where he doesn't always do everything to the fullest.
Right.
Sometimes he'll come up just a little bit short so that we participate with him.
That's good.
And we discover his goodness by him leaving a part off. So we see how the creation, perfect and good, but Eve is missing at this point, points Adam towards the fact that he needs a mate.
Yeah.
Okay. Later, when we see God in his dealing with Adam, and we see the curse of the ground, we see the curse on childbirth.
Yeah.
We see the curse on the relationship between Eve and her husband, Adam. And then the ground is cursed and his work is cursed, and he's going to be able to, all of that wasn't necessarily punishment. It was to force him to realize that he needs God for every part of his existence moving forward.
Yeah.
So again, it forces mankind back to God. That's what it's supposed to do. But what does man do? He hides.
Right.
He pulls away. So we see that over and over when God, eventually when we talk about his relationship or his covenant with Moses, and he gives us the law was to force us back to God.
Yeah.
But instead, one of two attitudes kind of comes out. Number one is, well, I can perfect this, and we start celebrating how good we can keep the rules.
Right, yeah.
Instead of forcing us back to God. Or the second one is just complete despair, and we run away from the law.
Yeah.
And just become lawbreakers almost by intention. So all of that, we're seeing an attribute of God where he does things to force us towards him. Mm-hmm. It's supposed to kind of call us back in that direction. Think about this, how Jesus taught in parables. Most of us think that Jesus taught in parables to make it easy to learn.
Right.
The Bible actually says the opposite. He taught in parables to force us to go deeper with him. So we see this attribute of God where he wants us to have a deeper, more dependent, and completely covenant relationship with him.
That's good. Yeah, philosophically, it's interesting when you say it the way you just said it, because then it makes sense why humanity is progressing the way it is, right?
Yeah.
The whole point of the evil one is to take our dependence off God and onto ourselves. And so humanism becomes our religion of the future, and we're trying to get us to think that way. So the more convenience, the more easiness that we can find in life, then it's like, yeah, we don't need a God. You know, we can figure it out on our own.
Absolutely.
And so, yeah, you can see that kind of conflict that's not spoken, but it's there. It's always under the narrative through time. And, you know, you can see how it has affected us, you know, as we've gotten more and more conveniences through the way we bring food, technology, and all that stuff. You know, you can see how it is changing the attitude where people do see that the dependence on a creator it doesn't need to be there anymore, right? Because I can do it myself. I can figure it out. Yeah, it's interesting how you bring that up.
What did you feel about when we talked about how the covenant means to cut, and then there was the selection of the best animal, the cutting from the nose to tail? What kind of thoughts came to your mind when you were hearing some of that? I know you know most of that stuff, but
for me, I thought there was definitely a good way of putting it, because, you know, you're talking about the covenant process and just the formality behind it, you know, doing it and showing that. It would be interesting to not, you know, to say you need to cut it this way instead of this way, just because of the fact you get better or worse, you know, in that deal. So everything's equal. The only one that came to my mind right away was Abraham, you know, the covenant God made with him. Yeah. And of course that was a vision that he was having at that moment when he was going through it. But it is interesting to see how God was making it very clear how covenants work, you know, and how that happens. And then obviously the blood part of it, you know, being foreshadowing of Jesus Christ.
Yeah.
You know, when we talk about covenants now, it is interesting. Like, we throw that word around, and even I probably would imagine, as you're talking about it on Sunday, covenant and contract, there's not a lot of room and a lot of space between those things as far as people are concerned. Covenant seems like a very religious term for a contract, but there's a vast difference between the two, which you brought up on Sunday.
Which was that relationship aspect, right? So a covenant's based on trust. A contract is based on mistrust or distrust. So, they have some of the similarities on what they're trying to accomplish, let's say, but the deep bedrock or the foundational parts behind that are almost opposite. Yeah. And so it was really fun to be able to show that.
There's a lot of double speak in there, right? I mean, I think the evil one definitely wants the double speak to happen because you want somebody to think that the contract is the same as a covenant. And again, getting back to the narrative in our society today, it does make sense why people think it's just a paper.
Yeah.
Right? We've heard that many times. Why do I need to have a covenant marriage?
Right.
It's just a piece of paper.
Sure.
We've already moved in that direction. We started moving in this idea that it's not a big deal. It's not any different. And then, it's interesting when you have premarital counseling with people. You've ran into it as much as I have. People do look at it like a contract. Like, I want my wife to do this and I'll do this. And if she doesn't do this, then I think I got the right to walk away. And then we have to do marital counseling later on because it's not working.
Right.
Those are the same arguments that come up, is that it's not a big deal.
Yeah, because you don't have that bedrock underneath that relationship, then there's already cracks in the foundation. And the moment when any water damage or pressures or storms come into your life, then it's going to collapse because you don't have the right foundation. I really love that point that we made that, a covenant has the I will statements.
Right.
The contract has the if then statements.
Yeah.
And, so Sunday morning, I'm making eye contact with people who are recently divorced, going through difficult situations right now. And you can see these tears welling up in their eyes because they realize that they have made a vow that they're to keep their end of the deal. Whether the other person does or not.
Yeah.
And that's where the rubber meets the road and where it gets tough because most people feel like the if-then statement, you didn't do what you promised, therefore I am off, then I can get off.
Right.
And that's not how it works.
And that's a tough subject, because, you have people that have left relationships for whatever reasons. And, and we want to couch it in the idea of the contract situation. And that seems to be most people's arguments when they want to leave a relationship or they want to walk away. And, my wife and I were talking about the idea of the covenant thing. And it's like, the issue is that when the other person is not fulfilling their obligation, the other person still is committed to the original agreement. And that is hard. That is hard, especially if the situation is not moving in the direction you want. Of course, we're not talking about infidelity and all that stuff. We're talking about the things that we use for excuses, like I've fallen out of love, or I just don't feel like they're into me like they used to be. Those are the big arguments of our day.
Yeah.
And those are the reasons why people use these excuses.
But even jumping back to the infidelity, look at the words that Jesus said when they're like, hey, Moses gave us permission to write our spouse a letter of divorce. And he said, because of your hard hearts, Moses relented.
Yeah.
Right. So even in a situation where it's super painful and rejections at an all-time high, when there's infidelity, God still holds us to the covenant aspects of it.
Yeah.
Even though there's an option. There's an option out, but that wasn't given. That wasn't the intention from the beginning.
Yeah. That's even hard to hear, isn't it?
It is.
That, God calls us to that high standard. But what it comes down to is this idea of, it really is an example of God wanting us to understand grace and mercy the way he understands it. Right? I mean, it is bad when somebody does those things against you, but at the same time, God's grace and mercy looks at our situation where we constantly keep making the same mistake over and over again. It says, I forgive you if you ask forgiveness. And in our marriages, we're like, nope, one and done. You did it. You messed up. I'm out of here. And so we have not learned that aspect of God's character, but it is something that God wants us to understand.
And, I don't know if I should really say this too much, but we should probably slow down a whole bunch before we get married.
Right.
Because we are making a covenant with someone, and you better know exactly what you're getting, right?
Yeah.
Before you do that. So many of us will end up sleeping around, finding a hot number that really turns our crank, and then we get married, and we haven't really established the type of relationship that God's really looking for.
Yeah.
That physical part that is a natural result of a covenant, that's a part of the benefit, right? When we partake of that before the covenant is made, it has already set us on a course where we discount all of the fundamental important parts of the covenant because we've had the benefit part.
Right. Yeah.
And that's so dangerous, right?
Well,
Then,
and the options are out there, right? When the devil was tempting Jesus in the desert, what did he give him? Options.
Yep.
Plan B looks just as good as plan A. It's not a big deal. Go ahead and go for it.
you're going to get it anyway.
You're going to get it anyways. Yeah. And so I think those arguments are always constantly in the mix. And I think that, unfortunately, we have people that have, champion those ideas in the church and leadership, and it's not good. And it's not good. And I think you're right. I think when you're talking about getting married, it is something where you say, listen, hey, this is a big deal.
Yeah.
And I don't think that big deal conversation kind of sinks in sometimes. I think people are like, for the time it's great. I love them and this is great. But what are you going to do in the times that it's not good, right? Because the thing that we say during your wedding ceremony is until death do you part, goodness and good times and bad times, and sickness and in health.
Right.
I've unfortunately had situations where I've had to counsel people where they're like, you know what, my wife is, senile, she's lost it, and I think I have the out. I think I should be able to leave. And you're like, no, this is when the covenant kicks in, and you're like, you have to, you need to
For
be there
worse, for poor and sickness.
Right. Yeah. You don't just get to opt out because it's not convenient.
That's the thing that just like totally train wrecks most people's idea of what marriage is based on.
Right.
Marriage is not based on love at all.
No. It's a component.
It's a benefit.
Yeah.
You don't want it to be based on love. You want it to be based on a covenant and a commitment, right?
Yeah.
Because love is a feeling, and feelings change.
Right. Emotions change.
Yeah.
All those
That's
things.
where I feel, I know this is crazy talk, but 75% of the rest of the world has arranged marriages.
Yeah.
And they work out pretty good.
Yeah.
And we're all about, hey, I found my soulmate, because
Yeah.
And then what's our divorce rate?
It's well, in
It's
the church
worse
and
than-
outside the church.
Yeah, it's worse than 50%.
Yeah.
If you put all the living together stuff.
right. Yeah.
It's
all
because
based on feelings.
because
yeah.
it's based on love. It's based on feelings.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think the definition of what we're moving forward to is love, is the love that God wants us to have.
Absolutely. I'm not saying
Yeah.
that. I'm just saying it has
Yeah.
to be based on something else.
Yeah. Well, and that's the commitment.
My
that starts
salvation is not based on how I feel on Sunday morning during
Right.
worship service.
Yeah. Yeah.
My salvation is based on facts.
Right.
Jesus died for me.
Yeah,
And
commitment
I gave my
to it,
life
yeah.
to him.
Yeah.
Whether I feel like it or not.
And there are days that
And
you
there's
don't.
plenty of days when I don't. And the devil wants you to know about those days.
Well, yeah, that's the part that he argues, right?
Absolutely.
He argues the feeling part.
Absolutely. Man, we are such an emotional driven society.
Yeah.
Our relationship with others, our relationship with our spouse, our relationship with God, it's all based on feelings.
And that's the grenade that blows things up.
Absolutely.
Yeah, because what else do you have to hold on to when you're in that situation, right? And you're saying, I don't feel like I'm in love with this person anymore. I don't feel the fuzzies. I don't feel the new buzzword connection like I used to. I don't feel that connection anymore. Well, you know what? The connection is this covenant that you made when you said I do,
Right.
which is far more important than anything else. It is tough. My wife and I, and I'm sure you've had this conversation with Lisa K. It is tough. There are days, like you mentioned, there are days where you have not felt like being married or felt like it was the best thing ever because of the conversations or the hurdles or the issues. And people will ask you like, what kept you together? Well, it wasn't obviously, the romance. It was because I made a commitment,
Right.
I made a commitment to this relationship.
Right.
And I think that is crucial. And especially for this generation that's getting into that phase of getting married, it is so important for them to hear that.
Absolutely.
For them to realize that this is what it's about. And, as much as we have a society that everybody should feel good about their decisions, that's not how it works.
Right.
And that's not how God reaches out to humanity. He doesn't just love us because it feels good to him. He loved us unto death, which was
we had
something
kind
he
of
had
a
to deal
weird,
with.
we had kind of a weird family that when one of us felt like it was, I'm going to pop the question, I think this is the one. We asked our siblings and our parents what they thought.
Yeah.
And there was always one of us that was like, I just want you to really think through this before you do that.
Yeah.
Because you've got googly eyes,
Right.
right? You're not thinking with your head at all.
Yeah.
And having someone that loves you with a covenantal love speak into your life,
Yeah.
game saver.
It is. Yeah. Especially when those moments come where you're like, I'm ready to cash out.
I've done hundreds of weddings. You have too, right? Not just weddings, but pre-marriage counseling things. And when I have to take one of the parts of the couple aside and say, listen, I want you to really think through this because I'm not seeing this.
Yeah, I'm not feeling it. Yeah.
I see where you're based on feelings right now, and that's going to fade, and this is going to be tough.
Yeah.
And then 5 years later, you're back in the office trying to patch this thing back together.
Right. Because it's not based on the right stuff. You can tell. I always love this. This is a great litmus test. And when I find out that you start talking about finances in the relationship, how do the finances work in a relationship? Mm-hmm. And when they're like, well, he has his account and I have my account, I'm like, we're already in trouble.
Yeah, absolutely.
You've already missed the boat. Mm-hmm. When you start thinking that way about something as simple as finances, you're already missing the boat. Yep. And that is part of our society today.
I've had conversations with people, and it wasn't just the sex that was the issue that we were talking about.
Yeah.
Well, I've had a couple before where the man was, it seemed like he had everything really put together, and the lady was struggling with all kinds of things, maybe from her past or whatever. I'm like, listen, I just want you to know, you feel like Superman right now because you're able to rescue her from all of her problems.
Right.
But this is going to wear out.
Yeah.
This I'm the knight in shining armor. It's going to wear out.
Yeah. What are you going to do when you need it?
Yep.
What are you going to do?
7 years later, they're not married anymore because he got tired of being rescuer.
Yeah. Yeah, it's not the way God intended it, and that's an unfortunate conversation that people are not willing to have. And if they would have it and think about it more, the sex is not even a factor. Mm-hmm. The romance is not even a factor. Mm-hmm. It is this person going to commit to me for life and all the things that life brings, all the different seasons, and that is a big deal. And the sad part is that commitment level is not something that always hits on the radar of people. I mean, I had a couple weddings last year where people were younger. They're in their mid-20s. Mm-hmm. And those conversations, whenever we got into those conversations about in premarital counseling, are we, how do you see this happening? What if Joe, whatever, he can't do it anymore? What if he, has some physical, something that happens? What are you going to do? Are you going to take up the reins and help out and still be committed to him like you are apparently right now in this conversation? And you can see hesitation. It's like, maybe that's an out. Maybe that's a possibility. And again, moving back into the contractual mindset, it's not a contract. If you're committing yourself to this person and they are not able to make it, and you have to step up and take care, that's your responsibility. That's what you've signed on for. And that is interesting.
I've told that story before. I know from the pulpit. I don't know if I've told it on the show before, but there was a man who had reached the pinnacle of his career. So he's a college professor. Now he's starting to do the circuit of speaking around the country, writing books, making lots of money, and his wife gets dementia.
Yeah,
super bad. Yeah, and he walks away from all of that to take care of her for the rest of her life.
Yeah,
he does. He doesn't get to leave the house. Basically, he's with this woman he made a commitment to.
Yeah,
and a covenant, and he lives a happy life until she passes away. Right. And then people interview him and say, "How could you do that? How could you walk away from everything at the top?" It's because I made a promise on X days 50 years ago.
Yeah.
Yep.
I think those moments are beautiful examples of this covenant relationship, and unfortunately they're scarce. You don't see that a lot,
right?
We have a lot of things in our culture that give us the option, and I would imagine the devil definitely worked overtime to put those things in place where it becomes a part of the thought process. But covenant to God and contract to God are completely different things, and whenever God speaks to us in a relationship with us, it's always in covenant. It's never a contract. You don't ever see God creating a contract with humanity. It's always a covenant. And so when he speaks, he's always said, my promises are always true. What I say, I put out there, I will follow, even if you do not. And that is something that as humanity we have to learn. And it's something that we might get handle on, but marriage is a very good example. That's why we use it. A very good example of that relationship that God's talking about, because it's the closest thing we have to understanding what covenant is. A lot of other things in our lives don't come close to that. Getting a job or buying a house, those things are all contractual. The only thing that we really have that speaks about a covenant is when we're talking about marriage. That's the closest thing.
What did you think when we talked about how all relationships have rules? Did you think anything about all relationships have rules?
She's been kind of quiet. Let's hear from you.
Well, I'm not married, so I didn't need to say anything.
Thoughts, though.
I do have thoughts. I find that interesting because there's one of the themes that God's had with me recently is understanding boundaries. And so your whole, relationships absolutely have rules is like saying relationships need to have boundaries.
Absolutely.
Now, obviously they're different in different situations. Like every relationship has different rules, but it was very affirming that even God has rules in his relationships, and Jesus had rules in his relationships, and boundaries are very important because in Deuteronomy, when you read it, and it's like, what is it, like 11, 18, and 28 or something like that, or 10 and 28, if you obey, this is what you're going to get. If you disobey, this is what you're going to get. These are rules, but it's still a covenant. God's going to do it, but if you uphold this end of the bargain, then you're going to get this, and if not, then this. And it's the same thing with Jonah. Like he was like, I am telling you, you're going to go to Tarshish, and you're going to, or Nineveh. Sorry, there we go.
Yeah,
you're going to go to Nineveh. Sorry, and I'm going to do this thing through you. God was going to uphold his end of the bargain. The rule was, are you going to obey or not? Are you going to answer the call or not? And that's, God's a parent, and so we think, like, oh, he's just going to love us and take care of us. Well, yeah, but, if you don't meet your curfew, then there's a consequence. There's a rule there. So,
yeah, that's a good point.
It's always fun to, just take it all the way down to sharing the road with someone else,
Yeah.
Then all of a sudden you're like, you stay on your side of the road and I'll stay on my side. People are, oh my gosh, all relationships do have rules, even with people we don't know, because we're sharing some space, right?
Right.
And so that was a lot of fun to be able to do that. And then, of course, take it to the place where, as you said, every relationship has different levels of boundaries and rules that come along with it. And the closer you get to my heart, the boundaries are different.
Yeah.
Which I know that Ted hates Brene Brown.
Oh, here
Let me just give an example. One of the things that I understood her reasoning that helped me understand boundaries better was her daughter, like, her feelings were really hurt by a friend who kept continuing to hurt her feelings. So she said, hey, like, pretend like you have a little jar, and every time your friend does something that means you can trust her more, you put more trust in the jar. So it was like marbles or Skittles or something like that. She was like, you don't just assign all of your trust to somebody that you don't have that trust with. You haven't built that relationship with. So it's like, in different relationships with different levels of trust, there are different rules. And sometimes as humans, we can think, oh, I should just completely trust people until proven otherwise. Well, there's a little bit of a lack of wisdom in that. You should probably assign no trust and then build trust. The rules have to change as you develop that relationship. But just that kind of example with, in the past, I've been the one that's assigned too much trust at first. And then when I'm not getting things back, I'm like, oh, wah, I'm the victim here. And it's like, no, you put your eggs in one basket, and you probably should have spread your eggs around, But God, he even does that with us. Like, he's going to start us off on milk, right? And then when we show that we can handle milk, then he moves us to pureed food, and then he moves us to meat. It's an interchange that we have to work on.
That's good. I understand what you're saying. Brene Brown. I still have not checked her out yet.
You know what?
You don't need to.
Yeah.
It's all good. She's a very feelings-based person.
Yeah.
Lots of feelings in there. She's got some good stuff to say, I'll say.
That's why I said on the podcast last week, there are ways to take what she says and understand how to apply
Ted's
the meat
right
and
now.
not the bones.
I think I hear Ted screaming at us right now from a
He's
car.
calling in right now.
He's like,
it's not like
he's using his one call from prison.
It's not like I believe that she's running the circuit in the Christian realm at all. I don't believe that at all. But
I think I think what you're talking about too is getting back to the understanding of when we start seeing the apostles talk about this idea of maturity in the faith.
Yeah.
There's an issue. There's a disconnect for us because when they're talking about maturity and they start mentioning stuff like, and all things that I'm a part of, I'm content, or, I count it all joy when I'm in suffering. When we're talking about it as pastors from the pulpit, and when we're preaching and it's really exciting, people are like, yeah. But the truth is, to get to that place is the understanding of this idea of covenant relationship with God, is that God is good in all situations, regardless of the reason why we have issues in our journey and we find that we have consequences for things is because we have moved out of the covenant, not him. And those results that he mentions, like in Deuteronomy and later on, Numbers, those things happen because they were the ones that did something stupid. God doesn't step back.
Absolutely.
Because God always finds a way to come back to the covenant, to bring them back to it. And the people that are messing up are finding the consequences of them breaking the contract or the covenant with him over and over again. And so those are the natural results of what happens. It's not like he's putting them into place and saying, ha ha ha, you messed up, now you're going down.
Yep.
Those were the inherent issues that were going to happen anyways. If you are not committed in a relationship with your spouse in a covenant relationship, you can almost bet your bottom dollar that at some point you're going to be tempted by another situation that's going to lead you astray or something like that. Those excuses will be there because that's the sinful nature coming into play. But maturity requires us to have this covenant relationship just like God, where we say, okay, you know what? I'm committed to this no matter what.
Yeah.
And I believe that you are the God that's bringing my life into existence, redemption, eternity, all those things. That's the difference. That's why you have believers that, could meet martyrdom and have a song in their heart. We read Fox's Book of Martyrs, which is always it's amazing to me when they're in the midst of being persecuted or they're on a pole being lit on fire or being killed by animals or whatever. And the people that are writing about their situation are like, and they're singing a song or they have a smile on their face or they're looking up to heaven. This is a maturity believing in this covenant, not a feeling. Because if my feelings were in that situation, I'd be screaming like, listen, let's talk about this, but instead they're committed to what's there, It's hard. I'm not saying that I understand it, totally, obviously, but I can begin to understand a little bit because of my relationship with my own spouse. Is that this covenant thing is a huge thing, and I'd be the first to say, I'm glad that it's based off of that, because there are many moments in my relationship with my wife, and this is no news. We've talked about it before, that the D word has come up, or the separation idea has come up. Because of what stresses, not feeling it anymore. We don't go on dates like we used to. Why don't you try to bring me flowers? That kind of stuff. Those kind of conversations start really becoming the emphasis of the relationship. And you're like, I'm done. I didn't sign up for this. And then covenant steps in and says, listen, you still made a commitment, regardless if all those things are in place. And the interesting thing is when you get back to the place of covenant, the whole thing changes. Then relationships become super strong. And you mentioned that it's people give up in the beginning and in the middle because they get caught up with stuff. But if they get to the other side, that's when the promises become fulfilled and enacted. I think that's powerful.
That was profound.
Yeah.
Because in seasons of where you're being forced to mature very quickly with God, you have no choice but to rely on him. What you get on the other side of that. And I think you would have asked me 10 years ago, do you think you'll still be single at 28? I'd be like, no, I'm going to have like 3 kids by then. But it has been watching myself go from truly not understanding what marriage is to understanding covenant with God. I don't think I'm going to be a perfect spouse by any shot of the imagination, but I finally understand what it means truly listening to God, even when it doesn't make sense, and sticking around even when I don't want to. That was what Israel did all in the Old Testament. They had these desires, they gave themselves into these desires, and then God allowed them to be fulfilled, like into their desires. So that's like the whole cycle in the Old Testament. He would rescue them. They're like on this Jesus or God high. Then they start deciding, I think I want to do this other thing again. Then God allows them to get what they want. Then they have the years of woohoo, and then they're like, wow, this friggin' sucks. And then they have to rescue this again. So it's like when you finally understand the covenant aspect of things with God, then it's like some people learn that in marriage, some people learn that before marriage, and all of it is valid. Because I could make the decision, 5 years into my marriage, like I really would like to just go and, make poor decisions outside of my marriage because I'm not feeling it. And it's like, I could give myself over into that, but then how many times have I done that with God and he's still kept me?
Yep.
Or my spouse could do that. And it's just, I don't know, there's just so many ways that we completely miss the way that God has just kept us over and over and over again. And some of us may not have experienced that from humans yet on earth, but we know we've experienced it from God.
Yeah.
And I feel like it doesn't click. It's like Pastor Gary. He's like, we've got a junk drawer, but we need to put the pieces together and realize your whole life is God keeping covenant. Your whole life up to this point is God continuing to keep covenant.
I think it's so cool because I think if you ever want to make the next step in your faith journey and understand what it is to have grace and mercy, forgiveness, then you have to understand covenant.
Yes.
And if you want to understand trust, your real trust, you have to understand covenant, because trust is not a feeling word. Trust is a part of the agreement that is there in the covenant that's never shakable. Because like when I'm with somebody, or I'm with my spouse and things aren't going the way it should, the trust that I have in covenant says, yeah, this is a really crappy day. I'm not being the best person I should be. But at the end of the day, I know that person's still committed to me, and I can work through it, and I can become better than what I was before.
Yep.
That's the progress that we start moving towards. And that's when we start seeing maturity. That's the kind of way God looks at us. If he constantly zapped us every time we did something wrong,
absolutely,
then we're never going to grow. We're just going to be in fear.
Or zapped us every time we asked for healing. That's another thing.
Yeah.
We think that God needs to just snap his fingers and completely fix us of something, but allowing us to be tempted and to walk things out with him and to pursue the healing the long way, and for him not to walk away from us and to be able to be strengthened in these areas and producing endurance, like all of that is like the whole point. It's the whole point of all of it.
Yeah. I mean, read Philippians. He gives us a formula of how things progress and how it makes us stronger.
Yes.
And it's the process of us trusting in all those situations until we get to the end and we're like, hey, I get it. But, if in one of those places I'm like, I'm not feeling it, this is not good, I don't like it, and you walk away from it, then what did you really gain from it? God's not going to walk away from you, but you are going to face the effects of your failure in abiding by that covenant.
And I have this interesting, I don't know if it's an interesting belief system, it could be a hot take, that there are multiple points in our lives where we have the decision to obey and go, quote unquote, to the next level in our faith, or we have the decision to stay the same.
All right.
And I think that given the opportunity of continued obedience, being able to pursue the true depth of understanding God and obedience that costs something, God's always going to give you the option to say no.
Yeah.
Like for the times that he's gone to somebody and said, I want you to quit your job and start the business. And they say, I can't do that. I'm cool with just staying where I'm at.
Yeah.
That's completely fine. Like God's going to love you, but you're missing out on the opportunity to know God in a completely different light. When you're just like bare all in front of him, fine, you take it, you can have it, like whatever you want, I'll do it. That is where you really see the fruit of a Christian life. I mean, I don't want to get martyred.
Right, yeah. No,
I would prefer to not but can you imagine being able to see somebody that made their faith so much of a point in their life that they were?
Yeah.
Even if it's just being persecuted.
Right.
Like the people that are being persecuted by the media for standing up for truth and all this kind of stuff. It's just persecution to be able to receive it and say, no, God is still in control.
Yeah. That's good. That's good. PG, we're at the end of our time.
Let's just talk about one more thing real kind of quickly, because it was the climax of the talk. So Adam and Eve are kicked out of the garden.
Yes.
And the reasoning behind being kicked out. What did you think about that? So that they don't go back and eat from the tree of life.
Yeah.
So can you explain
you've seen
that
before? Yeah. As a matter of fact, I can.
Okay.
All right. So when you take a look at those last 4 verses in Genesis chapter 3, he says, the Godhead is speaking to each other, and they're saying, look, their eyes are not open. They're just like we are, knowing good and evil, right? So they've lost their innocence. If they go back and eat from the tree of life, they will live forever.
So they would have been immortal in the flesh?
Immortal in their death, right?
Okay.
Yes. I know that's a little bit hard to say.
Would that have been like permanent separation from heaven?
Yes, and God. So it literally is the wink to what hell is.
Yeah.
Hell is separation from God in torment, in death. You die forever. If they eat from the tree of life after they have eaten from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, the redemptive power of Jesus will have no effect on them.
Yeah. It's a perpetual.
So it's
perpetual death.
Blasphemy, which is the permanent denial of Holy Spirit, is like.
I don't know about that, but
it's really like what you're saying. It's really a perpetual issue of them being kind of like being approved to do whatever the flesh wants to do for the rest of their life,
and that the power of Jesus won't be able to save them.
Yeah. And that's the thing is like they would have never been able to find possible redemption.
Correct.
And they would have never wanted it. right? Because they can live forever. They can do whatever they want to do in themselves. And that is, there's no judgment then. There's no judgment. There's no point where there is God saying to them, I have to deal with this.
Yeah, I think maybe, and this might be just, words that we're using, but they've already been judged.
By being kicked out.
Exactly.
Yeah.
They've already been judged because now death has set in.
Right.
So they're going to be constantly dying forever and ever and ever, which is a wink to hell.
Yeah.
And so they have to remove them. And so it's not punishment, it's protection.
Yeah.
How many times does God allow things to happen in our lives that is actually protection and not punishment?
Right.
Do you think the Garden of Eden is still somewhere on Earth?
That's a great question.
There we go.
That's
Conspiracy
a great question.
theory.
Yeah. Thoughts, Alex?
Well, you want my Harbor Light thought or my heretic thought?
Well, because the flood would have maybe wiped it out, but it's a heavenly place on Earth, so maybe
there's a lot of things
there.
that the flood wiped out, but that are there.
It's both.
Yeah.
It's both a spiritual thing.
Yeah.
You don't guard.
Do you think it was like a dimension maybe then?
I believe that there's some dimensional aspects to it for sure.
Well, I mean, the Bible's very specific to give us a geological location,
right,
of where this was based on rivers and things
but
in there.
Unfortunately, the flood does change the direction of.
Yeah. So there's not one of the rivers doesn't even exist anymore.
Right.
So,
and I believe so we're jumping into creation kind of stuff, and the flood, which we'll be talking about this weekend. But it's undeniable the fact that the continents all fit together, right?
Right.
And so when that the drift takes place during the flood, during those 100.
Stop.
Yeah, the pieces come apart.
What?
The whole world is broken and moved. That all happens under the sea while man is in the boat above.
Yeah. Things shift. 40 days.
So finding the exact location based on the geographical rivers, that doesn't apply now because things have moved.
Yeah.
Wow.
That's a good Harbor Light answer. I'll keep my heretic philosophies behind me. Okay, so next Sunday we're getting into what now?
We're going to do Noah.
Yeah, we're talking to Noah. Mm-hmm. So if you want to be here because there's going to be an actual ark on stage.
Yes.
That
and we'll have two of every kind of animal.
That Pastor Gary's built, and he'll be here. And he's going to have two of every animal here. We have excluded the mosquitoes; they're not coming, but the rest of it.
But there will be bear wrestling.
Yeah.
Yep. My youth pastor was a huge man.
Yeah.
And he tried to wrestle a bear once.
For real?
Yeah, there was a trained bear.
Trained bear, yeah.
And he tried wrestling, and he got his hiney kicked so bad.
Well, yeah, man.
Yeah.
One swipe and they take your head off, you know.
Right.
I don't know. I've hugged bears up in that zoo up in the UP. Mm-hmm. You take a picture with them, but they're little cubs.
Oh, okay.
And even a cub is pretty strong.
I think I may have told the story that I have a friend that is like a professional bear hunter, and he had 100-pound bear, which is a small bear, 100-pound bear, attack him, bounce on him, and break like 3 ribs, and
oh my gosh,
and it was only 100-pounder, and he's out there trying to kill 400-pounders.
Yeah, that's not a sport I want to get into.
This is a big man too. He's a big man.
No, I wouldn't want to get into that.
But anyways, yes, we're gonna have a great time this weekend. It's gonna be a lot of fun.
Y'all will not see me this Sunday if there's gonna be bear wrestling.
Oh, there is. Be ready. Be ready.
You would get into it, I know.
Okay, just a side note before we leave. Have you guys seen the cat videos where they're doing? They do a soundtrack of the wrestling WWE behind it, and these cats are fighting, and they're like real things that the cats normally do, but with the wrestling behind it, it's hilarious. They're like, "Oh no, John Cena just did blah blah blah." You know, it's hilarious. You gotta look for them. It's hilarious. I think I've sent you a video, and I think I sent Ted videos to show you. This is hilarious. It's my new little thing. Sorry, but it's WWE cat wrestling. I think it's going to take on at some point.
Well, we'll see you guys next week on the More Podcast.
All right, talk to you later. Talk to you later.
We want you to know, find, discover, change with us. More podcast ending transmission now.